Yay, we are back, and as promised, the first thing we're going to do is investigate us. So let us go. Well, let's open the door and go inside, shall we? Ah, the scene of a murder. It's horrible. Let's see. This seat has a handle, it seems. Ooh. This looks like all sorts of equipment that might be needed to keep the omnibus running. Feeding tubes, tools to repair wheels, blankets, horseshoeing tools. So it's a storage compartment for the coachman to keep his things, it seems. There doesn't seem to be any space for passengers to stow their luggage, that's for sure. Well, I don't imagine it would be very convenient for that purpose anyway. That's blood that's soaked into the seat, the victim's, obviously. Yes, and that seat would be clearly visible from the roof deck. Would you really stab somebody in full view of the other passengers like that, I wonder? Well, it was after dark. And there was a lamp on in here, so perhaps the culprit couldn't see anything outside through the skylight. Whichever way you look at it, it doesn't seem like it was a planned attack. That's a poster for the great exhibition that's due to start 6 months from now. There's a lot of focus being drawn to the Crystal Tower, the centerpiece of the whole exposition. Ooh, the Crystal Tower! It's under construction already, I believe. People all over London must be fizzing with excitement at the prospect of such a grand event. It's quite a large skylight, isn't it? Yes, quite large enough to afford a good view into the cabin from the roof deck. And there doesn't appear to be a handle or catch of any description. So I suppose it can't be opened from inside the cabin, at least. That's a poster for the Great Exposition that's due to start 6 months from now. Oh, it's the same thing as before.
Can we go on top?
Probably. Have you seen enough? Let's step back outside then. So this is the roof deck of the omnibus. Oh, you must have a wonderful view of London streets from up here. So people sit all the way up here on bitter winter nights with the cold air rushing past them, and they have to pay money to do so. Brr, I can't imagine how cold it must feel. That just made me think of something horrible. Can you imagine being dragged around the city in the freezing cold as a punishment? Perhaps that is the real price you pay to stay out late.
Phoenix Wright Omnibus?
What?
Can you click on it?
No, I can't, but... So this is the roof deck. Oh, okay. I thought maybe the other chair would get us something different.
Well, you can only see from this back chair, and they couldn't all of them possibly be riding on it, could they?
I don't think so. Why is it the Phoenix Wright?
Omnibus?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. This is definitely blood, isn't it? Not the most pleasant sight to be confronted with on our first day in London. Well, nothing will come of grumbling now. Now, by the way, is Mr. McGilded right-handed? Yes, I believe so. He was toying with a coin in his right hand a little earlier. Ha, pity. If only he'd been left-handed. I think blood in either glove would be fairly incriminating, really. Stabbed once in the abdomen with a knife whilst journeying in the omnibus. died due to internal hemorrhaging resulting from the trauma. Alright. Back. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had a few customers. I remember it well.
Hold it! Hold it!
Yes, I think it was sometime after 10, wasn't it? Whoops. Oh yes, that's right. That's right, sir. Yes, ever so freezing, in fact. And you had 4 passengers on board at the time, is that correct? Yes, that's right. Not all traveling in the same parts of the bus, of course, though, so no. And there were no other passengers when the incident took place. No one alighted, for example? Quite right. No other passengers like that, none. So nobody fled the scene of the crime either, then. I have to say the boss insists on it running, he does, every evening, that last bus of the day. But I do wonder sometimes if it's altogether worthwhile. Yes, sorry to say. What do you mean by that? Well, what with it being so cold and everything, and only making 20 pence on the run, you see. Yes, I spend that much at the pub on the way home, just trying to warm up again. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus.
Hold it! Hold it!
And you saw them through the skylight in the roof of the carriage? That's right, when you sit up on the top deck, the window's right there at your feet. There was a lamp on inside, so I had a pretty good view. The 2 of them were wearing hats, so I couldn't exactly make out their faces. That's going to be relevant later. There's not a shred of doubt in my mind that it was Mr. McGilded. How can you be so sure? Well, how can I put it politely? McGilded is a gentleman of rather small stature. I couldn't have mistaken him for anyone else. Let's not forget that when the vehicle came to a halt, the only people inside the enclosed cabin were the deceased Mr. Mason and Mr. McGilded. There's no room for doubt here. I really wish there was. Then out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged the knife right into his guts.
Hold it! Hold it!
You actually saw the exact moment it happened? Didn't I already testify to that? Or are fair, dinkum, hard-working city bankers not considered trustworthy these days? Oh, no, I didn't mean that. This is no good. I've really got his back up. Perhaps you could just tell us what you saw in a little more detail, if that's... My lord. Juror number 3, what's the meaning of this? My mind is made up, my lord, completely and utterly made up. Made up about what? I don't like the stinking rich, never have. They're always up to something or other that they shouldn't be, every one of them. And that little leprechaun of a man is no exception. Well, he can't fool me.
This is different.
There's no point wasting time listening to any more of this. That's my opinion on the matter, anyway. That is precisely what I was about to say. As the foreman of the jury, it's my duty to set a good example to my fellow jurors. What is happening here? Let me see. Ah, yes, it seems that's how the members of the jury give their verdicts. With fire? Apparently, yes. White for innocent and black for guilty. As the 6 members of the jury make up their minds about the case, one by one they each cast a ball of fire into the great scales of justice, as we saw a moment ago. So if those enormous scales fall completely to the black side, does that mean... Let's do our very best to make sure that doesn't happen. Now I'm even more worried than I was before. Very well, the court acknowledges the change in the jury's stance. Counsel for the defense, please continue with your cross-examination. Ha, this is a nightmare. This is different. That's right, he stabbed him. I screamed I did, couldn't help it.
Hold it! Hold it!
He stabbed him, you say, and you were sitting up on the roof deck, were you? Yes, that's right, sir. I was up on the roof seats. I remember seeing the little gent sitting next to the fellow that was stabbed. I've been thinking about a new hat design, you see, so I was just gazing absent-mindedly around. But then I happened to look down through the skylight. It was sticking right out from his belly, that huge great knife. A grim sight indeed. That didn't help me at all. The jury looks like they're even more convinced my client did it than ever before. It appears to have made everyone even more dubious that Mr. McGilded is telling the truth. If only we had some evidence to counter their suspicions. Mr. First. Oh, yes, sir? Is this the knife you saw? Oh, good grief, yes, that's it, the very one, sir. Is that... Yes, counsel, this is the blade that was driven into the victim's belly like a stake through the heart. That is a blade of considerable size, counsel. It is, and furthermore, the scabbard is emblazoned prominently with a certain initial. The letter M, which seems oddly familiar. Please no. M for Magnus, perhaps? Or McGilded, possibly? Take your pick. It seems this particular big name in London made a magnificent mistake. But there are M's everywhere. Yes, like in Mason. This blade is far too extravagant for a poor brickmaker to have owned. No, this weapon of murder almost certainly belongs to the accused. Not conclusive, but certainly compelling, counsel. The murder weapon has been entered into the court record. My lord, if you'll forgive the interruption. Juror number 2, go on. Mr. McGilded is a pillar of society and a gentleman, and a gentleman's word should be sacrosanct. However, those of us in service know we must accept hard truths. Wait, what are you... Dispose of the rubbish. No, I don't wish to cause offense, but I do like to eradicate all traces of filth and grime. I have painstakingly typed every word uttered here today and cross-referenced all the facts. As such, I am now in a position to draw the only logical conclusion. Not again. That's 4 out of the 6 jury members who proposed a guilty verdict. There are only 2 left. We've had it. Every time I press these witnesses for more information, I just make the situation worse. Nevertheless, what we need more than anything at the moment is more information. We're still very much in the dark. I suppose I'll just have to keep pressing the witnesses, knowing that more sparks may well fly. We mustn't give up hope that we'll uncover something that will give us a way to fight back. But... Alright. I'll keep trying. I can't give up. I just need to keep calm and listen to statements again. As soon as I heard the scream, I stopped the bus, and then I saw it too. Okay, well first... That part is the sheath, right? Isn't it? Are you alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh, sorry, yes, I just don't really like blades. Oh, those don't seem like the words of a man with a large katana slung from his waist. That's not a blade, that's Kazuma's soul. Anyway, there's no sense in delaying it. Let's see what the blade looks like. Oh, that looks a lot like blood. It surely is blood, the victim's. An Englishman's blood looks a lot like Japanese man's blood. Did you think it wouldn't? Sorry, it's just that we've only just arrived here in Great Britain. I'm finding it a little hard to adjust. Yes, I do understand. An ornate letter M. Undeniably, Mr. McGilded, yeah. And it's beautifully gilded, too. It must be very valuable, I should think. Ah, what is it? Look at this M. If we turn it upside down, yeah, it becomes a W. This contains everything. A W, yes, this is one of those, turnabout cases, I'm sure of it. I'm afraid I don't know it all, but what I am sure of is this is an M. Oh, well, that idea was quickly quashed. I feel like they're kind of making jokes about...
Our language?
No, not even our language, but, typical contradictions, like, is he right-handed? Is the M a W? Like, I feel like twice that happened. Whoops. Okay. Here, what exactly did you see? Oh, well, sir, that would be the passenger, sir. Yes, collapsed on the floor he was.
What? You couldn't have seen that. He's sitting upright in the chair, stabbed.
Yeah. And by the passenger, obviously you're referring to the victim, Mr. Mason, the brickmaker. And the other passenger had that knife in his hand, like this. By the other passenger, obviously referring to the accused. So he's saying Mason was on the floor?
The victim was on the floor and the other guy had the knife in his hand, but we know that that's not true because the knife was in his chest and he was seated.
Huh. Interesting. And then he plunged it down like this, stabbing the other passenger in the belly. What? My lord, I wish to speak. Yes, juror number 5, do I take it that you too? As the master of the London Guild of Coachmen, the idea of a murder being committed in one of the city's carriages is utterly abhorrent to me. It wouldn't be right to make a decision before hearing all the facts, though, I said to myself. But I have heard enough now. The horse has bolted, as they say. No, please, just keep an open mind a little Gee up now, Silver Blaze, the finish is in sight. It's all down to the knitting woman. Beppo is a long-standing member of the guild, and I trust what the man says. Oh, thank you, sir. You're too kind, sir. Oh, that is too unkind, sir. Which now means that 5 jurors agree to condemn this man. Madam Juror number 6? Yes, dear. What can I do for you? You have heard the testimonies of the witnesses in the stand? Oh, yes, I certainly have. Still got my hearing, you know. Then, pray tell, why are you yet to pronounce your leaning? Well, dear, the thing is, I'm a creature of habit, me. I always got to the park at around this time of day and sit on a nice bench and get on with my knitting. There's a lovely little park just near where I live. McGilded Park, it's called. The gentleman donated it to the city, you know, to put a smile on Londoners' faces, he said. I can't imagine such a fine young gentleman would have it in him to take another man's life. He's always doing wonderful things for the city. That's right, a man like that wouldn't stab someone, surely. Mother, maybe go to the McGilded Public Library later and borrow some more books. How many Londoners live with their heads in the clouds? Do you people not know what kind of a man Magnus McGilded really is? What kind of a man he is? The philanthropist Magnus McGilded has enough wealth to purchase the entire city he claims to value so highly. But where did all that wealth come from? Your client is a Shylock, sir? And one with the very darkest of souls. What? Stone the crows. McGilded lends money at extortionist rates of interest, so his victims have no hope of repaying him. When they default, he takes possession of everything they own. He is a vulture that preys on the weak. I've never heard any mention of that before. Your faculties haven't deserted you, I'm sure, madame. So has this thought not crossed your mind? Would a man wealthy enough to buy London in its entirety not have a carriage of his own? What possible reason could this man have had to make use of a public omnibus service? You're not saying that the victim, a poor brickmaker, had next to nothing to his name save considerable financial liability. It will come as no surprise that his creditor was the accused, Magnus McGilded. But let it also be known that the very day Mr. Mason was killed was the final repayment date for his debts. Good gracious. The brickmaker was destitute. He had lost his house. He had not a shilling with which to repay his debts. And in the end, this pitiful soul had the very last thing he owned taken from him, his life. By the merciless philanthropist pretender Magnus McGilded. I don't believe it. If I might add something briefly, Miss Susato claimed that the victim had been lent money by Mr. McGilded, but where's the evidence to support your claim?
He's the Grim Reaper on his phone.
I know, and he's drinking blood. Pray forgive the discourtesy of filling my hollow chalice in a court of law. Oh, man.
He's on guard.
Yeah, he's met on guard now. Aha, there it is. Lord Von Zeke's hollow chalice. How can this be considered acceptable? But I find myself in unexpectedly good humor. I had heard ladies from the Far East could show great courage, but I didn't expect to experience it myself. As judicial assistant to the defense, I am simply doing my job. What a pity that your display of courage is in vain. This is the debtor's ledger, which details all monies loaned by the accused. You will find the victim's name clearly recorded inside. Oh. Allow me to present this ledger as evidence. And pray forgive the discourtesy of raising my chalice in a toast to the enigmatic East at the same time. A marvelous toast, counsel. I will gladly accept this new evidence. The debtor's ledger has been entered into the court record. High rate of interest. It includes the victim who owned 20 guineas. Ah yes, 20 guineas. The victim owed a considerable sum, and the accused made quite certain he had ample recompense? I think that's what it is. Oh. Well, it would seem I've had the wool pulled over my eyes. Oh, she's mad now. Regrettably, madame, this is the modus operandi of the accused. And it's such a pretty little part, too. What a scoundrel. Still, maybe it's all for the best. Ah, wait a minute. I don't stand for nonsense. What? That was it, the last juror's decision. According to this Encyclopedia of British Law, when all members of the jury have concluded the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended, and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. That's what it says here. The final verdict. It's over then. Oh. There's a footnote, though. A footnote? However, the defense... All 6 members of the jury are now in agreement in this case. Allow me to convey my respect for your swift and righteous decision. According to the laws of this country, I will now conclude the trial by delivering my final verdict. I trust there are no objections? Miss Susato, just tell me one thing. Oh, yes? You were in the middle of saying something before the footnote in your Encyclopedia of British Law, however the defense. What did it say next? Oh, yes, of course. One moment. When all members of the jury have concluded the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended. Then the footnote says, however, the defense, has the right to demand a summation examination of the jurors at this point. Summation examination. A summation examination. From which century has that tomb you have there been resurrected? Judging from the binding, I would say that book is at least 50 years old. Any modern text on British law wouldn't even give such an antiquated procedure a mention. It's a relic, long forgone and certainly no longer practiced. So you're out of luck. Oh. What even is it, Miss Susato, this so-called summation examination? Oh, one moment and I'll read about it. You would demand the right to a procedure before you even understand what it entails? Typical Nipponese. Or Nipponese. Alright, Mr. Naruhodo, I think I understand. It seems that under this procedure we'll be able to appeal to the members of the jury. To do what exactly? Appeal to them to change their leaning and reverse their decisions. And it says here that if successful, the proceedings of the trial must be resumed. Make them reverse their decisions. Yes, in times gone by, barristers would use a summation examination to attempt to influence the jury's decision, but that procedure became somewhat of a formality with no practical benefit, really, so it rather fell out of use. I wonder why. Because it was devoid of purpose. Changing just one member of the jury's mind would be hard enough, let alone several. No self-respecting defense barrister would even assert his right to try in this day and age. Still, I don't see any mention of the procedure actually being formally revoked. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that although it may be antiquated and largely forgotten, it isn't yet extinct. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? A summation examination, our last possible option. Do we assert our right to carry it out or admit defeat?
We're going to assert our right.
We will. The defense wishes to assert its right to a summation examination, my lord. What? I think it's more British. Yeah, because I think British, and I could be wrong, but the way, like, there's O-U-R in this game instead of O-R, so I think since I imported this, maybe it's more British. Or maybe because they're in Britain, it's British.
Alright,
you know?
I'm gonna get some tea, I'll be back.
Alright.
I'm gonna practice my Japanese tea.
Okay, I will wait for you. She's got to get some tea, and then we'll continue. I wonder if I didn't press every statement, if that would have happened, or if there's no way to proceed until we get to the summation examination. Waiting a bit. Yeah, so right now she's just getting some nice tea, and she has several different kinds. I think she got a new one today at Aldi.
Holy?
Ah.
Oh, it's hot though.
Okay, okay. Whew. These are the handles, good.
Yeah.
That's why they figured a handle. Before, they used to burn their hands.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Didn't,
If you get the bottom rim, it's not too hot. So just kind of touch it from the side, and let me know when you got it.
Got it.
Okay. Okay. London is the capital city, the most powerful nation on earth. The world can exemplify the very high standards of judicial procedure. Summation examinations are an embarrassment that should remain buried.
Objection!
But if it's our right, it's our right. I believe it can prove vital to this trial. The defense's petition is perfectly valid. The court will proceed with the summation examination.
I think the judge has sense in this.
Yeah, so far it does seem like he has some sense, but we'll see if he's starts to be like the Phoenix Wright judge soon enough. This is madness. Foreman, are you and the remainder of the jury ready? Eh? Well, I'm not, there's no mention of this in the letter I received, you see, so all members of the jury will be asked to explain on what grounds they have reached their decision. On what grounds? You must all justify your decisions and explain why you believe the defendant to be guilty. Well, my lord, you're rather putting us on the spot. This is most irregular. No mention was made of this before. I don't really hold with all this justifying lark. That seems to have thrown the jurors off. It seems none of them have experienced this before. All right, then, the summation examination. A defense procedure no practicing lawyer has attempted for years, is it? Well, just maybe. It might be the opportunity we've been looking for to turn this trial around. So be it then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court hereby calls upon you to state the grounds on which you find the defendant, Magnus McGilded, guilty of this most serious crime. Woo, this is different. Okay. The jurors' contentions. There's no one else inside the carriage at the time, so it has to have been him. I trust the driver. He has an excellent memory, it seems. 4 passengers with fares totaling 20 pence. He stuck the chap next to him just like this. Brazen, I must say. Absolutely brazen. I have simply typed and collated all the statements made thus far and drawn the logical conclusion. You can trust the guild. Fair fares is our motto. We haven't raised prices over about 4 pence for years. The scoundrel stopping that poor man on the floor. It beggars belief. Hey, but we know he wasn't on the floor, so maybe we can... I'm starting to wish I hadn't pushed for this now. Some of the jurors don't seem to have wonderfully formed arguments, though, do they? What we can do, we need to get these 6 people to change their minds. I'll have to throw everything I can at them and use some very persuasive language. Just a moment, Mr. Naruhodo. According to my book, that's not quite how it works. Oh? I thought I was going to have to thaw their icy minds with some heartwarming rhetoric about the defendant. Unfortunately, once the jurors have decided the defendant is guilty, they're unlikely to heed anything the defense says. But then, they reach their conclusions by their own reasoning, you see. Your pleas will sound like excuses. In fact, it could recoil on you. The more you try to persuade them, the more entrenched they may become. Then what on earth am I supposed to do? Oh dear, I'm just citing what I've read about British law, Mr. Naruhodo. Right, I'm sorry. Do you have any ideas how to make this work, then? Well, from what I can understand, the key to this procedure is using the jurors' own words to make your arguments. What do you mean? Well, the 6 members of the jury are randomly selected members of the public. They may appear to be present to present a united front, but the truth is, they are complete strangers who just happen to find themselves here in the courtroom together. And that's the way to break them down, you mean? Yes, exactly. We must listen very carefully to what each member of the jury says, and see if we can identify any contradictory statements. If we can, we then contrast the statements and pit the corresponding jurors against each other. I see, so it's contradictions in what 2 or more jurors say that we're looking for. In a way, then, this is similar to a regular cross-examination. Oh, yes, I suppose you're right. Find contradictions in their statements and pit the jurors against one another to break them down. Alright, I might be able to pull this off. No, that's not right. I have to pull this off. Can we start proceedings, counsel? I would ask you to take the stand for this. I'm expecting a clear and concise rebuttal. Yes, my lord.
I hope that he has his katana in court.
I do too.
See, the driver doesn't have a good memory because he also saw him on the floor.
Yeah, so let's go here
They could
first.
hit the maid and her.
So you can press as well.
You gonna press her or present?
I don't know.
I guess press her.
Yeah. I really think you should stop waving the needle around. You heard what the good coachman said before, didn't you? That a hideous man stabbed the poor fellow just like this. Yes, that is what he said, you're right. McGilded Park is such a lovely place, too. I've always enjoyed resting my legs there while I get on with my knitting, and I thought that anyone who donated such a delightful place must be a fine fellow indeed. I suppose I was wrong. Whoever would have thought that he was a miserable, murdering moneylender with not a scrap of remorse. Oh, I like the alliteration. Miserable, murdering moneylender. Oh, help. She's not sure can be that he's guilty now. The old lady certainly seems to know her mind, doesn't she? So, we just need to find two jurors with contradictory statements and pit them against each other. Which is so much easier said than done. Is that perhaps what you were thinking? How did you know? Well, I took the liberty of doing some research in case you happen to find yourself in such a situation. So I read you what I found out. It is a little long, I'm afraid. Sure. Very well, listen to this. During the summation examination, you will hear the assertions of the 6 members of the jury. In this situation, the counsel for the defense should use triangle and pit with impunity. Having done so, you will be able to compare the chosen assertion with those of the other jurors. Select the corresponding buttons to listen to the other jurors' assertions again. Note that you cannot choose the assertion of the juror you initially selected, nor can you choose assertions of jurors who have changed their leaning to not guilty already. Once you've compared the various jurors' assertions, work out which two contradict each other, and then pit them together with triangle to pull them apart. I see. She wasn't joking when she said it was long. The first step is to listen very carefully to what each individual juror has to say. Then I'm sure you'll start to see which ones might not quite agree with each other. Alright, let's get this right now, so I never have to listen to that long and boring explanation again. That's the spirit. Alright. Okay, so we're thinking... excellent memory, it seems. Okay, I mean, we have 5, so we're good. So, let's try that, and see if it works.
Objection!
Those two statements clearly contradict each other. As the foreman of the jury, I refuse to accept this outlandish interjection. There's no contradiction here, you young stripling, none whatsoever. I agree. You refrained from personal attack on the jury based solely on your own frustrations, counsel.
Do you have to show her?
Well, what they're saying is the two must contradict each other, so stabbing that poor man on the floor might contradict next to him. So let's try this.
Okay, that works.
Those two statements are completely contradictory. What? Explain, counsel, post haste. Oh, dearie me, I was only knitting a jumper for my other half. What is all this claptrap? What does contradictory even mean, I ask you? We've heard from more than one witness that they allegedly saw the actual moment when the defendant stabbed the victim. Now, out of curiosity, juror number 3. What? Can't you see I'm busy here? How would you say the defendant stabbed the victim? What sort of motion was it? I want to test me, do you? It was like this. Stuck the fellow next to him without even getting up. Just like the prim banker said. Yes, that was Mr. Fairplay's testimony, quite true. Now then, juror number 6. Oh, is that me, is it? What can I do for you, young man? She is so cute. How would you say the defendant stabbed the victim, madame? Oh, well, dear, as far as I understand it, it was like this. He stabbed the poor man after he'd collapsed on the floor. The coachman said so. Now don't move! Take a look at those 2 jurors. He stuck the fellow next to him without even getting up. And he stabbed the poor man after he'd collapsed on the floor. Well, I never. They're stabbing in totally different directions. What? Bless my stitches, what a muddle. What this tells us is that there's a strong possibility one of the witnesses isn't telling the truth. Oh, but why? Why the dickens would they lie? I don't know that yet, but what I do know is that if the trial ends at this point, we may never find out. We may never know the real truth. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, can you really let that happen in all good conscience? Lies, you say? Oh, dearie me. I can't abide people telling lies. The scales. I don't believe it. Wait! Now hear this, my fellow jurors. I warn you, you cannot listen to this man. Look at him in his black suit. He's clearly some devious Eastern sorcerer using magic on us all. If I could use magic, do you really think I'd be putting myself through all this? Answer me this, dark jinx. Huh? Me? What exactly is the problem? What of it if 2 witnesses have slightly different recollections of events? What of it? Let's say the Shylock did stab the victim as he was sat next to him on the omnibus, and this young dandy saw him do it. And now let's say the victim collapsed on the floor, and then the Shylock stabbed him again, and this old lady saw him do it. Well, what's to say it didn't happen like that, Who are you calling a dandy, sir? Why, I should take this knife to you. Who are you calling old? Why, I should take this needle to you.
3 of them fighting.
They're ready to kill each other now. But could the foreman of the jury be right? Did the 2 witnesses see 2 different moments of the same crime?
No.
No. Because we know he wasn't down at all.
He's seated, and there's only blood on the seat.
Yep. Unfortunately, Mr. Foreman. What is it, you dark jinx? Come on out with it. What you're suggesting is impossible. It's out of the question. What are you talking about, man? How can you possibly say that? You do realize that I'm only doing my job. As foreman of the jury, I have a responsibility to steer everyone in the right direction. So where's your evidence, man? That's what we want to see. I say the 2 witnesses saw 2 different moments of the same crime. If you see that's out of the question, show me some proof.
Picture?
Yeah. Looks like the only way I'm going to convince him is to present him with something he can't dismiss. Some irrefutable hard evidence. As you wish. What? I'll give you the proof. It's out of the question that 2 witnesses saw 2 different moments of the same crime, as proven by... And here we go.
Take that!
This clear piece of evidence. Well, Mr. Foreman? What? Do you know what they say about me, young man? They say I've got no powers of persuasion. Oh, I see. I'm sorry to hear that. But no one will need persuading about this. You're even worse than me. What? 2 different moments. In other words, the victim was stabbed 2 times. Oh!
Autopsy report?
Oh. A single stab wound. Yeah. See? Whoops.
But I still think that the picture should have been accepted.
Yeah, it should have. Unless it's something that comes later, but... Yeah, single stab wound. If you'll allow me another chance, I'd like to present you with more evidence.
Take that!
This is the victim's autopsy report. According to what's written here, Mr. Mason was stabbed in the abdomen. Only once. Alright, only once? It's quite simple. The victim was stabbed precisely one time. Which means these witnesses can't possibly have seen it happen 2 different times. Alright, I concede defeat. And he was the first one to say guilty. Oh, well done, Mr. Naruhodo, you did it. If you can manage to change 2 more jurors' minds, we can force the trial to continue. 2 more, actually. There's something else that's bothering me about a couple of their assertions. Then that's where you must strike next. So I need to pit 2 more jurors against each other and show that there's another contradiction in their assertions. Exactly, you can do it. Well, the scales of justice have shifted, but they still weigh heavy on the side of guilt. Counsel, you have the floor again. Continue with your summation examination.
You can't pit the ones that go back.
Yeah. I think it has something to do with the price. 4 passengers totaling 20 pence. There's no way to contradict that.
Oh yeah, because if it was 4 pence, it would be 16 pence. But it's not.
Yeah.
20. So he charged him 5 pence.
Objection!
So he could pay his bar tab.
Yep. These 2 statements clearly contradict each other. They do. Explain yourself, counsel. Me? Oh dear, what have I said? I swear on Silver Blaze's mane and name, I haven't the first idea what you're talking about. According to the group testimony we've heard so far, there were 4 passengers on the omnibus on the night in question, and according to the coachman, Mr. Beppo, he took 20 pence in fares. Quite right. I have those precise details typed neatly here in front of me. And juror number 5 also told us the following. The fare for the omnibus is always 4 pence. That is it, a fair and convenient single price, just the way London carriages should be operated. But that doesn't add up at all. In fact, it leaves a glaring discrepancy in the facts. Why, man, why?
Unless he's another person.
4 passengers paying 4 pence each, if you do the multiplication, it would be 16 pence. Yeah, you're right. If there's a 5th person, then...
So either he charged for his bill, or there's another person on there.
And that's what I'm thinking. Okay. By 4 pence, in fact, or precisely 1 person's fare. 1 person's fare. Yes, in other words, on the omnibus that night, it's distinctly possible there was another passenger we've heard nothing about. Good gracious. This can't be right. The coachman of the guild are good honest men, one and all. Trustworthiness is our watchword. The figures your coachman claims most certainly do not add up. Your watchword, good sir, is a fallacy. I beg your pardon. Mr. Guildmaster, I think you ought to consider that if this trial were to end now, the news will surely spread all over London. The news that one of your coachmen tried to hide the fact that he lets nefarious characters ride his omnibus. Alright then, how do I make it so this miserable trial doesn't end, Well, according to the book here, you simply launch a ball of fire into the innocent side of the set of scales. Now hold your horses there, coachman. We are all in agreement. Wait till I get my hands on you, Beppo. I feel like the game expects me to do this one first, but... Alright, this is very irritating. Begging your pardon, sir, I'm going to do the same. For the love of Mike, not you as well. A penny can be the difference between a smile and a tear, after all. I certainly can't put my trust in someone who doesn't follow my exacting standards in financial matters. Oh, really? I, for one, think it's only proper that we hear from the witnesses again. Wait, that means 4 jurors are now leaning to not guilty. We've done it, Mr. Naruhodo. We've won. What are you playing at, you dandy fool? Shut your trap, sir. No one deceives me. But we have a consensus. I said such a trap. I know a liar when I see one. If the chap ever dares to cross the threshold of my shop, I'll take this razor-sharp blade and shave every last hair off his head. Please tell me he's a barber. Well, in a quite remarkable turn of events, the defense's summation examination has flipped the balance of the scales of justice. The jurors now stand at 2 for guilty and 4 for not guilty. Accordingly, there is no longer a large enough majority among the jury for me to adjudicate, and the trial must continue. I hereby ask the defense, prosecution, and witnesses to return to their places, and I call upon all of you to continue to pursue the truth. So, Lord Von Zeeks, continue to substantiate the case for the prosecution, if you please. Here comes the toast.
Do you have a sword too?
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Oh.
Having savored the rich aroma of the carmine contents of this hollowed chalice, it may seem crass to crush it to dust. Pray forgive the discourtesy. Lord Von Zeeks. It is cold. Is it cold in here, or is it just me? As your antiquated tome no doubt says, the prosecution may not speak during a summation examination, so I honored a deathly silence and listened to the charade. It seems I overestimated the intelligence of the jury. Well, no matter. There is nothing so hard to prove as a self-evident truth, it would seem. No, and why else would we grace the courtroom with our presence after all? So, let us proceed to the next round of battle. Bring forth the witnesses once more. Witnesses, I trust you heard the summation examination we just had to endure. Oh, yes, sir. That I did, sir. Of course I heard it. Oh, yes, sir. I heard it.
Why are you so scared?
I don't know. You heard in the end the coachman. I believe it's Beppo. Yes, sir, my lord, sir. If it transpires that in your previous testimony you were attempting to veil the presence of a fifth passenger on your omnibus, you will be found guilty of perjury. You are advised to bear that in mind, sir. Oh mio Dio, Now then, witnesses, I hereby call on you to testify before the court again. You will explain the various misgivings brought to our attention by the defense's summation examination. I only carried 4 passengers that night, I swear it, but, well, I, for one, was told I had to pay 5 pence for the bus. He filled us on the fare, he did, and then I saw that blood-curdling sight as well. It's all too much. I tell you, I saw McGilded stabbing that man. Everything I said before stands. Oh, yes, he stabbed him. Yes, he did. I think so, yes. Oh.
Well, his first statement, he says, but... So I'd like to know, did you charge him more to pay your beer tab?
Yeah, which is crazy. The phantom fifth passenger conjured into existence by my lurid eastern friend never existed. The confusion has arisen from the coachman's sly little cause an egg? Beppo, explain yourself. I'm terribly sorry, Guildmaster. The Guild's fare is 4 pence across the board, you know that. Am I to understand that you've been overcharging our passengers by a penny a fare? It's so cold, and the last run of the day is always half empty. You have been dishonest, coachman. Oh, I'm sorry. You're a disgrace, Beppo, a disgrace. And your selfish actions have brought dishonor to the entire guild. If I may, sir, I had to pay 10 pence on the bus just last week. What? 4 passengers at 5 pence each is, yes, 20 pence. I've done the arithmetic 10 times already, I just can't make the result come out differently. No, that figures. Well, it would appear that one of the aforementioned misgivings have already been explained. So, counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, if you please. We've already had the pleasure of a protracted summation examination today. I see you tend to continue with the parlor games. Absolutely. Shifting his eyes around again. I only carried 4 passengers that night, but,
What? Press him. But what?
Hold it! Hold it!
So there were only 4 passengers on your carriage, but you didn't charge them the standard 4-pence fare. Is that right? It's impossible to make the last run of the day pay. I was so cold, all I could do to stop myself passing out. I'm getting chilblains just listening to you. It was terrible, so I wanted to give myself a pat on the back for even keeping the bus running. Doesn't a dedicated coachman deserve an extra penny per passenger? You're digging a deeper hole for yourself here. If only there had been a 5th passenger in the omnibus that night, then we would have had another suspect. Well, I, for one, was told I had to pay 5 pence for the bus. I mean,
Why didn't he question that from him?
Hold it! Hold it!
Does that mean everyone on board that night paid 5 pence instead of 4? Well, I paid 5 pence too, sir. And I just told you that I did. A flat fare of 5 pence across the board. It's not something to be proud of. The so-called discrepancy my learned friend identified was nothing of the sort. Much like the phantom killer you so desperately needed is gone, dead, and buried. I'd have been happy if it ever existed in the first place. He fiddled us on the fare, he did, and then I saw that blood-curdling sight.
Hold it! Hold it!
This blood-curdling sight? You mean the murder, I presume? Yes, sir. A loathsome sight. No man should have to witness the horror in the eyes of a man the moment his life is taken. Oh, well, not exactly, sir. I mean, I didn't actually see the exact moment the gent was stabbed. Good gracious, really? We have another witness who did, however. The banker had already testified to it. But Mr. First didn't actually see the point at which the victim was killed. That may turn out to be very significant. I heard the banker gent next to me take a sharp intake of breath, see? That's when I looked through the glass. That's when I saw that horrible blade poking out from his belly, all covered in blood. Every time I see a knife now, I can't help screaming, even when I'm eating. Wow. I tell you, I saw Mr. McGilded stabbing the man. Everything I said before stands.
Because I don't think he saw his face.
Yeah.
Hold it! Hold it!
So you saw the defendant, Mr. McGilded, stabbing the victim, Mr. Mason, who was sitting next to him. That's what I said, isn't it? It was bothering me before this was. For just a brief moment, he hesitated before answering the question. Anyway, there was only the 2 of them inside the carriage, wasn't there? There's been much talk of a 5th passenger, but as yet, 0 evidence. Then why are we wasting our time for, huh? It's black and white. The man's guilty. Something about Mr. Fairplay's testimony just jars with me. I wish I could work out what it was. Okay, well, this was him.
Because he couldn't have seen it, because he was driving.
Earlier, you testified you saw the moment when the defendant allegedly stabbed the victim, didn't you? Oh, yes, that's right. You said that the victim was on the floor and described the assailant holding the knife in an ice pick grip. I suppose. I might have, yes, put the cart before the horse, maybe. What's this? Well, I'm quite sure about most of it. I was driving the horses when I heard a scream from the seat on the roof deck. Oh, I expect that was me, sir. Then when I turned around, yes, I saw through the skylight. The gentleman was on the floor and the knife was sticking out of his midriff.
He couldn't have seen it. Because he was very front.
Yeah, that's right, yes, and the fellow holding the handle was the famous man, yes. So in short, you didn't see the moment when the victim was actually stabbed at all. I really thought I did, but But when I go over it again in my head, no, I suppose I didn't actually see the precise...
Excuse me.
Do you have something to say about that, Mr. Fairplay? Now you listen to me. I know what you're thinking. He didn't really see the exact moment when the fellow was stabbed. What are the chances of that? Eh? Are you asking me or telling me? He's getting flustered. I might be able to extract some new information. Could he just have to have seen the exact moment the crime was committed?
No chance. Because he had to stop the carriage.
Well, it's a little hard to believe, certainly. Unless you spend your time peeping through a skylight on top of the omnibus, that is. Peeping? I'm a respectable city banker, I'll have you know. I know what I saw. I remember it as clear as a Ballarat day. It was a grim scene. I don't mind telling you. Thank you, Mr. Fairplay. Oh, excuse me if I was getting a little hot under the collar there, my lord. I would ask you to supplement your testimony with a clear statement about what exactly you saw. Oh, I can do that all right. I'll tell you just how grim it was. Do you think I'd forget the sight of those blood-soaked hands after that butcher stabbed the man?
Hands? He was gloved.
Yeah.
Present the gloves.
Objection.
Blood-soaked hands? Well, I admit that soaked might be laying it on a little thick, but anyway, there was definitely blood all over them. Both of them were covered in it. Well, I'm very sorry to disagree, Mr. Fairplay, but that's more than a little peculiar. What? Here are the gloves worn by the defendant, Mr. McGilden, on the night in question. Oh, yes, right. And there certainly does appear to be a sizable dark-colored stain there. But as I'm sure you can clearly see, it's only on the right-hand glove. Arr.
Is he biting his cane?
Yeah, in short, Mr. Fairplay, your testimony is inconsistent. But, no, that can't be right. So you were the liar here, then.
We don't like liars.
That's right, you were quite clear about it. You said, it was both hands. Mr. Fairplay, if your last statement was a lie, it calls your entire testimony into question. You say you saw the moment the victim was stabbed, but is that really the truth? Alright, well,
Objection.
It was a simple mistake. You can't justify accusing this man of lying. Yes, it was in both hands. It was only one, but the fact remains, the victim's blood was on the accused. No, Mr. Fairplay categorically stated that he saw blood all over both hands, which means there's a strong possibility that this witness was deliberately trying to mislead the court. Or he saw somebody else.
Yeah.
Why? I'm a city banker, for pity's sake. My word should be the gold standard. I'm a gentleman, not some gutter snipe. Upstanding members of society don't prevaricate. You know, the vocabulary in this game is a little higher than the...
Well, I wonder if it's because they're supposed to be in a high court in England.
But I even thought in the first case it was. Unless I'm just remembering the girl, I don't know.
This is a little fancy.
Yeah. He's claiming to have no reason to lie, but is that really the case? Mr. Naruhoda, if we had some evidence to explain why Mr. Fairplay might be lying, it could turn the tide in this trial completely.
I know. The ledger's his, not Mr. McGilden.
You think so?
Well, let's examine it. Who else owes money?
Yeah, we haven't examined this yet. This portfolio must contain all sorts of secrets in London's gentry. Oh dear. Do you really think we ought to look inside? Well, it's not as though we know any of London's gentry personally, is it? Apart from our great detective friend, perhaps. Actually, I wonder. I assure you we will not find Mr. Sholm's name inside. Well, let's see what we find. Okay. Gosh, it's crammed full of gentlemen's names, isn't it? Yeah, I suppose they're probably not all gentlemen at all, are they? After all, not everyone in this country is well off. Ah, goodness, what is it? Look at this, do you see the name here? Bruce Fairplay. Should that mean something to me? It does sound strangely familiar, actually. Bruce Fairplay, the witness testifying at this very moment. Oh yes, of course, the banker. Why is his name in here? Ah, he borrowed 20 guineas, did he? Now look, the repayment date is fast approaching. It's possible that this is just a coincidence, of course, but this could be very useful information. Good thinking, girl. Man, no wonder you do this for a living.
And he's a banker, so he really shouldn't be in there, because he should be well off.
Yeah. So, my lord, yes, counsel. The defense is ready to present evidence. By Jove, are you sure? Yes, evidence that will clearly demonstrate why Mr. Fairplay had a reason to lie in his testimony. Arrgh. Very well. Like, first he bit her from the side, now he bites her from the top. His poor teeth. I hereby call on the defense to present its evidence. The evidence that demonstrates a motive for the witness's alleged deception of the court.
Take that!
This is a list of the debtors who owe money to Mr. McGilded. Yes, a list of innocent victims crippled by the accused's extortions. The point is, among the names of these debtors in your name, is your name Mr. Bruce Fairplay. What? Mr. Fairplay, are you currently indebted financially to the accused? No, well, it's barely worthy of being called a debt. According to this ledger, you owe 20 guineas. Not an inconsiderable sum of money, wouldn't you say? Well, what of it? Let's suppose Mr. McGilded were to be found guilty of murder. What would become of your debt in that case? These documents state that the loan agreement is forged between two individual parties. Therefore, were the creditor, the defendant here, to be sentenced to a capital punishment, all outstanding debts which were owed to him would be annulled. They would cease to exist. Cease to exist. Mr. Fairplay, is it not the case that you claim in your testimony to have seen something you never in fact saw in a devious attempt to annul your debt of 20 guineas to the defendant? Order, Mr. Bruce Fairplay. Yes, Mr. Lord. My lord! He's going arg for my lord. What? Let me ask you again, and be aware that your answer may have most serious implications upon your future, sir. Did you or did you not see the precise moment in time at which the defendant is alleged to have thrust a knife into the victim? Your silence speaks volumes. You did not tell the truth in your testimony. Alright, now let's not make a melodrama out of this. Perhaps I did overstate the truth a pinch. But it makes no difference. I definitely remember seeing blood in Mr. McGilded's hands, both of them. And yet only one of the defendant's gloves, which we have here as evidence, is stained. Oh, so you keep saying...
Uh-oh.
I wonder if I might be allowed to speak, sir. Go ahead, Mr. First. Well, the thing is, I think I remember seeing it myself, as it happens. Seeing what? The blood, sir, on the assailant's hands. I think, yes. Yes, I'm almost sure that it was on both of his hands, not just one. What? What? It makes sense. If there's that fifth person, they're telling the truth about what they saw, but it's just not McGilded.
Yeah, and the other guy, well, then he got 25 pence to run that carriage, not 20.
Unless he was hiding in that compartment or something crazy. Because if he hid from the other side, because the other side is where the handle is, then he could have gone out. It would appear that we're going to need further testimony from all you witnesses. This time I would like to know precisely what you did and what you did not see. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Yars. Yes. Mr. Naruhoda, this is good news. The course of the trial seems to have shifted slightly at last. Yes. I might finally have a chance to turn things around here. There was blood on both hands of the assailant. I sincerely and distinctly remember that. However, I suppose you might say that I didn't see the exact moment the stabbing transpired, if that matters. I remember seeing the knife, and I remember seeing both of the attacker's hands with blood on them. I didn't actually see anything myself, no, not until I heard the scream. Anyway, the fact remains, there can't have been anyone else inside the carriage or we all would have seen. Well, lo and behold, in true the fact, not one of you was witness to the crucial moment the crime was perpetrated. I apologize, my lord, but honestly... there was no one else inside that carriage and the man's hands were covered in blood. That much incriminating evidence is tantamount to saying we saw the man do it. That's really not what testimony is about. Let us examine the interior of the omnibus once more. The victim's fresh blood is clearly visible on the seat, corroborating the witness's account. In other words, there is no substantial nor significant change in the facts of the case. Very well, your cross-examination, please, counsel. Yes, my lord. This will be our last cross-examination for tonight. I don't think we should press him, because I think he's telling the truth there.
Right.
So we'll skip that. However, I suppose you might say that I did. Now this will do.
Hold it! Hold it!
Don't try to downplay this. Whether or not you saw the exact moment of the crime, it's a matter of fundamental importance, as you well know. But for crying out loud, we all know that no one else could possibly have done it. I was just, trying to save us all some time. You have a loan of 20 guineas outstanding with the defendant, do you not? Had you hoped to release yourself from that financial burden by ensuring the defendant was found guilty? That's not entirely not what I was hoping for. I just lost a little guinea or 10 when I backed the wrong horse in the Derby, that's all. I was going to win it all back. There's a fixture this weekend, that's a sure thing. A little guinea or 10. I'm a banker. No one bats an eye if I borrow a little spending money for the weekend. I think you may have revealed rather more about your character than you bargained for, sir. This witness's scruples are not on trial here. Proceed to the next witness. Is that really how it's supposed to work? I've seen the knife. Both. Okay, we should press him on this.
Hold it! Hold it!
You definitely saw that too, blood in both hands. Yes, sir. I mean, I know what you're going to say. Only one of Mr. McGilden's gloves has any sign of blood on it. That's right. The thing is, as I remember, sir, when I looked down and saw Mr. McGilden sitting beside the other fellow, I don't believe he was wearing any gloves, sir. He wasn't wearing these gloves. That's correct, sir. And I saw the blood on both his bare hands quite clearly. It's true that the dark colored stain on the dark leather gloves wouldn't have been easy to see. I should point out that the police officer who apprehended the accused on the night in question reported that there was no trace of blood on Mr. McGilden's gloved hands. There wasn't blood on his hands. Oh, that is puzzling indeed. That must be significant somehow, I'm sure of it. I didn't actually see anything myself, no, not until I heard that scream.
Hold it! Hold it!
You didn't see anything? Oh, yes, sir, that is to say, no, sir, I didn't. Very sorry for what I said before, sir, very sorry, yes. It was very wrong of me to make up stories and say I saw him stab the man. Wouldn't you agree, sir? I know what you're insinuating, but I certainly wasn't making up stories. Still, to say you saw nothing isn't right either. Is it? No, sir, I saw nothing at all. Mr. Beppo, you were driving your horses. At the very least, you must have enjoyed a good view of London streets, no? Oh, please, you didn't even see that? It was so cold that night, you see. It was all I could do to keep from passing out, sir. Yes, my head was fairly frozen solid, sorry to say, sir. It would seem prudent to avoid travel on the last omnibus service of London's cold winter nights. Beppo! Ah! The guys.
Hold it! Hold it!
And everything you saw of the incident was through the skylight on the roof of the omnibus. That's right. It was fiercely cold that night, but the glass wasn't frosted over. Oh yes, I remember I was shivering, it was so bitter. Which rather begs the question of why the pair of you were sitting on the roof deck in the first place. Well, I don't know about this young fellow, but I couldn't enter the cabin. Oh, why not? It was locked from the inside. I tried knocking, but no one opened the door. It was locked? That's right, and it's a public bus service for pity's sake. That's not what I call fair play. Yes, I had exactly the same experience. I tried knocking, but the gent inside just gestured at me to clear off. So I had no choice but to climb up to the roof deck and look down longingly into the warm cabin below. Well, I can assure you I wasn't just looking down, I was glaring long and hard. But that's precisely why I can tell you with absolute confidence that if there was anyone else at all in that cabin, I would have noticed. Unequivocal, I would say. I'm not sure about these two witnesses. Could they really have seen everything inside the cabin through the skylight? No. Allow me to confirm one thing, Mr. Fairplay. You were riding this omnibus, and witnessed the events in the cabin through the skylight, in the roof, in the floor of the upper deck. Is that right? That's right, yes. In that case, there is a portion of the cabin interior that would have been out of sight from you. What? By golly, really? Obviously, at this stage, we can't say for sure, but the possibility cannot be denied that at the time of the incident, there could have been another passenger in the enclosed cabin of the omnibus.
Objection!
Enough hypothetical meandering, my Nipponese friend. The prosecution demands that you substantiate your claims. After all, the scene of the crime was here in the flesh. Very well, I will uphold the prosecution's demand. You will identify the area of this cross-sectional plan of the omnibus. So, let's look at this again.
Like, he can't see directly below him.
That's right. Yeah.
You can only see the other seat. Right?
Yeah! You can't see both seats there. See, there you can see, from the top right, you can see the bottom left. And if you're up front, you can't see anything. You'll identify the area on this cross-sectional plan of the omnibus. Where exactly in the omnibus are you suggesting this potential extra passenger could have been situated?
Take that!
Both rows of seats on the floor face in the direction of travel, whereas the seats in the enclosed cabin face each other. Which means the visible part of the cabin, which passengers on the roof deck can see through the skylight, is as I've drawn here. Ah. That's right, my lord. As you can see, the seat opposite the one on which the victim and his attacker was sitting is obscured from view. In other words, if someone had been sitting on that seat, it's quite possible that these witnesses would have been completely unaware of it.
Objection!
It's quite possible some phantom was sitting there. You Nipponese have a... You too tired now?
Well, I want to get out there. How much more do you have?
I mean, I don't know. Let me see, it's 9:18.
I still have to brush my teeth.
Okay. Let's see what the next few rounds of things say, and then
Okay.
if we have to keep it there, we keep it there. Or if we have to leave it there, we leave it there. Have a forbidding habit of obscuring the truth with ambiguity. I concur with the prosecution's rejoinder. In a British court of law, evidence is paramount. I cannot entertain this conjecture, counsel. That is, unless you're about to put a name to this mysterious passenger to whom you allude. Can you, Mr. Naruhodo?
Oh, I don't think so.
I don't think so. I honestly don't know. Who could it have been? Who could have been in the other seat, which was out of sight from the witnesses on the roof deck? I don't know. Huh.
Oh, wait. The one that's sitting across him is going to be the accused.
That's true.
Because the one next to him is the one that stabbed him.
That's right. But as precedents of the Japanese Empire, you will look to the sky and walk on, making sure all signs of tears are gone. Go on. This isn't just a case of going on, Miss Usato. Alright then, I'll go on. The defense would like to put forward a name.
They want to know who's sitting on underneath, right?
Right, and that would be...
It's the accused.
Yeah. And that means the person they saw was not the accused. That response was a desperate attempt by a man who has no notion of his own limitations. He is a prejudiced, condescending little jerk, isn't he?
This game has used some, I would guess, racist terms to Japanese.
Against like Asian and...
Yeah, it's not been nice.
It has been... But I think that's kind of the point, is where you're in this land, and it is the early 20th century too. Not like racism is gone in the 21st. So especially... Yeah, he's probably looking at him like, who is this guy? And just looking down. And so you're going to set him straight. Let us not delay, counsel. The defense is still to name the passenger in the other seat. This could be it. This could be the chance I've been waiting for to turn the trial in my favor. On that night, on the night of the murder, the person occupying the seat in the omnibus cabin that was secure from view was... The passenger in the closed cabin that the witnesses on the roof deck failed to see had to have been Mr. Magnus McGilded. Mr. McGilded? What are you talking about, counsel? That's the name of the defendant.
Objection!
Whoa! If I desecrate this chamber by smashing my hollow chalice, do forgive the discourtesy, Lord Von Zeeks. People talk of those tiny island nations in the Far East as having a learning and culture of their own, but I see they use the terms ill-advisedly. What are you trying to say? Let me explain terms that even a student of an artless backwater, such as yourself, might understand. When the bloody scene unfolded, the victim and his assailant were sitting side by side. Multiple witnesses have attested to that fact. It's the very premise of which this case is built. But that premise may be wrong. What? If the victim really was sitting beside Mr. McGilded, it creates an inconsistency that can't be reconciled in any way. What inconsistency, counsel? The defendant's gloves, my lord. Both witnesses made the same testimony. They claimed that there was blood on both hands of the person sitting next to the victim. Yet we know the truth to be otherwise. Only one glove bears the gory remains. The point is, even in the face of this irrefutable evidence, both witnesses have maintained their stance. Yet their testimony remains unchanged. Exactly, they both adamantly swear that they clearly remember seeing blood on both hands of the assailant. In short, their memory of events is correct, and the testimony reveals the truth. It was somebody else sitting beside the victim that night, a third party we have yet to identify. And the victim's blood was on that passenger's hands, both of them. And who was this third party?
I don't know.
Obviously, the true culprit. Extraordinary. Order. What exactly are you postulating? The defense's postulation is just that, nothing more than conjecture. The witnesses have clearly stated that they saw the accused. No? They saw the hat. When elaborating on this testimony, Mr. Fairplay said the two of them were wearing hats, and I couldn't exactly make out their faces. Yes. The tops of their heads were obscured by the roof. I could see the rest of them, though. Yes, that's right. Both gents were most certainly hatted. Hatters do tend to notice such things, sir. And what particular styles of hat did the two gentlemen sport, Mr. First? I'm afraid I don't remember. And you call yourself a hatter. The style of hat makes no difference. There was no third passenger in that cabin. How can you be sure? Because if there had been, the accused, Mr. McGilded, would undoubtedly have offered to dispose the fact. Unless, that is, you are proposing an even more preposterous explanation? that the accused failed even to notice the presence of the true culprit in the Valley Cab, but he always sleeps.
Yeah.
Ah. That's right. If there was another person traveling the omnibus, inconceivable Mr. McGill would have been unaware of it. Ordar, there's clearly a simple solution to this problem. Okay, so we will leave it there. It's getting tense, though. What I'm thinking, though, we're very close to the end of this. We'll probably have to investigate the scenes. And then return. Woot! Alright. Well, until next time.